In the early 1940s, as the war in Europe grew more intense and the skies over France and Germany filled with bomber formations and fighter escorts, a small group of men in Alabama prepared to enter the air in machines that many said they should never touch, in a country that, despite calling itself free, had drawn invisible lines across opportunity, ambition, and expectation. They were African American pilots, and they were being told repeatedly, by both words and actions, that the sky was not meant for them, that discipline, courage, and technical skill were not qualities they could possess in the numbers required for combat aviation, that the machinery of war was too precise, too complex, too demanding for the men who had grown up in segregated towns, denied access to the same schools, libraries, and mentors as others, and yet, in the dusty heat of Tuskegee Army airfield, they would prove that these assumptions were not only wrong but dangerously limiting to those who clung to them. This is the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, of how a group of determined men, facing prejudice, bureaucracy, and the intense scrutiny of both allies and opponents, would rise above expectation, not through rhetoric, but through training, precision, bravery, and professionalism, and how their flights would leave a mark far beyond the battlefields, altering perceptions of what was possible and forcing a nation to confront the gap between ideology and reality. The United States Army Air Forces did not create the Tuskegee program out of a desire for equality or justice. It was an experiment born from pressure, petitions, and the insistence of civil rights organizations who demanded that African Americans be allowed to serve as pilots, navigators, and support crews. In 1941, the Army established a training base at Tuskegee, Alabama, an isolated stretch of land chosen deliberately to keep scrutiny contained, to control observation, and to limit interactions between black cadets and white officers, while simultaneously exposing them to the full rigors of military aviation training, under conditions that were intense, exhaustive, and unforgiving. The men who arrived there were acutely aware of the eyes watching them: instructors, politicians, skeptical journalists, and even fellow soldiers who believed they would fail. And each flight, each classroom exercise, each examination carried a weight beyond their own personal ambitions. They were not simply learning to fly airplanes. They were participating in a social experiment, one that would define the credibility of African American soldiers in a segregated military, one that would either confirm or shatter deeply ingrained assumptions about race, intelligence, and the ability to perform under pressure. Failure was not an option, because their failure would be interpreted as proof that the entire race was incapable, and success, though it would be quietly acknowledged at first, would need to be relentless, precise, and undeniable. Training itself was grueling. Cadets studied complex subjects: aerodynamics, navigation, engine mechanics, meteorology, formation flying, bombing accuracy, gunnery, while performing physically demanding drills, mastering takeoffs and landings in challenging conditions, and learning to operate under fatigue, stress, and intense scrutiny. They were tested not only for skill but for resilience, for their ability to maintain focus while enduring overt prejudice, for the strength to persevere when others doubted their competence, when instructors whispered that they were not ready, when bureaucrats considered shutting down the program because of low success rates, when the world outside Tuskegee assumed that they would wash out, that they could not survive the rigors of combat. Those who persevered, those who earned their wings, carried not only their own lives and ambitions into the air, but the hopes and expectations of every cadet who would follow. Every African American soldier denied opportunity, every skeptic forced to reconsider what courage and skill truly meant. When the first Tuskegee Airmen were deployed overseas, they faced challenges that extended far beyond the clouds. Assigned primarily to bomber escort missions, their task was to protect unarmed or lightly armed bombers flying deep into enemy territory, often under relentless anti-aircraft fire, unpredictable weather, and the constant threat of enemy fighters. Each mission required coordination, timing, and nerves of steel, but also demanded discretion and calm under circumstances that would have rattled even the most seasoned pilots. The airmen flew in tight formations, communicating with precision, maintaining speed, altitude, and spacing, while knowing that the eyes of both allies and enemies were fixed upon them. Stories emerged of their efficiency, their professionalism, their refusal to lose a bomber under their care, of enemy pilots who came to respect the skill and discipline of these aviators despite the social prejudices they carried on the ground. By the time their first tours concluded, the Tuskegee Airmen had not only protected thousands of bombers, but had also earned the admiration of commanders who had initially doubted them, proving that excellence could not be confined by color, and that courage, training, and determination could redefine expectations. What is remarkable, however, is that the Tuskegee Airmen were more than just pilots. They were innovators, problem solvers, and symbols of possibility. They developed tactics for formation flying that minimized risk. They coordinated with ground and air support to maximize mission success, and they maintained discipline in an era where every misstep could be amplified as evidence against them. Their missions were cataloged, their records scrutinized, and yet, over time, their success became undeniable. The term Red Tails, coined because of the distinctive markings on their P-51 Mustang aircraft, became synonymous not only with skill and reliability, but with a quiet defiance of systemic expectation, a visible emblem of excellence in a time when recognition was slow to follow. Returning from missions over Europe did not mean the end of challenges for the Tuskegee Airmen. They remained in a segregated military, stationed in bases where facilities were divided by race, and confronted the same societal prejudice that had shadowed their training. Letters home reveal the tension between pride in achievement and frustration at discrimination, the sense that even as they contributed vitally to victory overseas, the recognition at home lagged. Some airmen pursued education, teaching, or leadership roles in their communities, using the discipline and perspective gained in the air to mentor younger generations. Others struggled with bureaucracy and slow acknowledgement, their accomplishments reduced to footnotes in broader military histories. Yet, the legacy of their work extended far beyond medals, citations, and declassified reports. It reshaped the U.S. military itself, laying a foundation for eventual desegregation, and it inspired countless others to question the limits imposed by societal assumptions. The story of the Tuskegee Airmen is not solely one of combat, nor is it a tale of heroism defined by weapons or destruction. It is the story of opportunity confronted with preparation, prejudice met with excellence, and expectation challenged by performance. It demonstrates that history often hinges not on the loudest voices or the most visible battles, but on the quiet persistence of those who refuse to be defined by limitations imposed upon them by others. As we reflect on their journey, perhaps the enduring question is simple: which assumptions today are limiting potential, and which overlooked talents might be reshaping the future if given the chance to take flight? Much like the pilots who soared over Europe, red tails gleaming, proving that the sky belongs to no one, and yet can be claimed by those with courage, skill, and determination.